so that's good. Well, this morning I want to kind of do just a single series, a single sermon, kind of bridge where we were coming from last week into where we're going into the next week. And if you want to look with me, we're going to be in Hebrews chapter 11 to start. But I just want to jump right into the scripture. Here's what the author tells us. He said, "How much more do I need to say?" Which is kind of funny to me. It's kind of like the preacher getting up and saying, "In conclusion," which you know if you've been right here, and that doesn't really mean anything, right? He says, "It would take too long to recount the stories of faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and all the prophets." And he says, "By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions. They quenched the flames of fire and escaped death by the edge of the sword." And then this next part is the one that I really want us to concentrate on this morning. He says that their weakness was turned to strength. Now, I think for most of us, right, I mean, our vision is much better in hindsight, 2020, right? No matter how prepared you think you are, no matter how much training you think you've got, information you've read, nothing can replace real-world experience, right? That's the best teacher. Any parents who've gone through, like any of you who've gone through the miracle of childbirth, you kind of realize this, right? How many of you read the book? It was called What to Expect When You're Expecting. I think that was the name of it. Anybody remember this when you read? I don't care how many times you read that book or whatever. There's no way a book can prepare you to expect what's coming. I mean, I know like Kimberly did most of the work for both of our kids, but I was traumatized by the whole thing that I saw on both of their births. It's like a horror movie, right? There's just some things you can't understand until you're actually there and you go through it, right? But we all face these questions and doubts, and the Christians to whom this letter to the Hebrews was written, they were no different. The author's writing them to encourage them to keep going. Don't give up, endure, right? Sometimes we just need somebody to tell us, hey, don't quit, keep going. You just need somebody to tell you can make it, right? This is not going to kill you. There's another side to this. Right? Keep on pressing. And this group really needed to hear this because they were suffering at this time on a level that we really can't even understand. Like they were losing their rights, they were losing their property, some of them even lost freedom, been put into prison. Some of them had even lost their lives because of their faith. And so the writer of Hebrews, he's writing to encourage them in this, and he tells them things like, hey, you're running in a race, so run with endurance. We talked about that a little bit in the last series, right? And he doesn't just hype them up with like some great Twitter-worthy, quippy statements, but he lists out like some guys, some women, heroes of the faith that have actually done this. Look at them, he says. And he calls this group a great cloud of witnesses, those who've shown us through experience what it means to endure, and that you can do it too, because we find encouragement from those who've been through it, right? We find encouragement from those who can say, I've been there, but there's another side to this. I did it. That shows us we can do it too. And it leaves that inner bully that we all fight with speechless. Sometimes you just need to be in church or watching with somebody to be able to say, I'm not the only one. There is another side to this. And most of the names like we just read in that list, you'd probably recognize. I mean, even if you didn't grow up in church, or you know who David is probably, and names like Gideon, Samuel, right? No surprise they're mentioned in the Hall of Faith. But there's another couple of names here I can understand too, even if maybe you'd never heard of them before, like Jephthah. Anybody heard of this guy before? Jephthah's mentioned there. He actually had an interesting story if you want to go back and do a case study. His mother was a prostitute. And when genealogies were written back then, they would usually kind of state who the father was, but when they got to Jephthah, they had no clue. I mean, it could have literally been anybody in the town. And so they just put the name of the city where he was born. I mean, that's how messed up his life started out. And his stepbrothers hated him. They kicked him out of the house. And yet from all of those humble, hard, harsh surroundings, God raised him up to be one of the great judges, one of the great deliverers. And if you study some of his history, you'll see some places too where he had some bad spots. He made some bad mistakes, and that's understandable with a background, when you're struggling from difficult situations. But God turned his weakness into strength, the writer says anyway. And I totally get why they mention a guy like Barak too. I mean, like from Hawaii to an Illinois senator to 44th president of the United States. Now, I don't care where you're politically, that deserves a shout out, right? But there was actually another Barak in the Old Testament, and he served with a judge named Deborah. female judge leader, and he really just kind of hid behind her. If you read the story, he's kind of like, okay, well, if you go, then I'll go with you. But he went. That was the whole point. And God gave him a victory because he went, even being inspired by somebody else, by Deborah, to do that. So I get why he's mentioned too. He shows us God can still use you even in your reluctance if you still give him the chance to do what he wants to do with you. Even Moses was hesitant at times, but he persevered. God used him. The one that I had the hardest time understanding, I think, in this short list, and why the author would bring up is Samson. Samson trips me up a little bit because, like, when I say the name Samson, what do you think of? You think of strength. You think of hair, right? I mean, Samson isn't like Jephthah, where you might have never heard of Jephthah unless you went to seminary somewhere like that, but. Samson's iconic. Samson is Hollywood. I mean, Samson, people know about Samson. He's known for being strong, but he's also known for being pretty impulsive. He's known for being a womanizer. He's known for not kind of having his stuff together, not having a lot of with-itness, especially when it came to women. But isn't it something like how life will sometimes define you by your worst moments? I think that's Samson too. But what tripped me up, I guess, is when understanding his inclusion in this list is the author of Hebrews, if you go back, the author's done a masterful job of building this case of how God turns weakness into strength, right? But here's a character, Samson, who started out strong, but if you know his story, he ended weak. He went weak. And so I want to look at just a real important frame of his life to try to understand, okay, why would the author of Hebrews include someone like this to see him as an example of weakness turned to strength? It seems backwards. This man had so much power, right? He had so much potential. Yet the end of his life was pretty humiliating. I don't know if you've ever known anybody like that, someone who you thought, man, like they could have done so much. There was so much potential, could have been so much. Or maybe you've been that person and you kind of beat yourself up, who didn't feel like you've lived up to your own expectations. But we find Samson, okay, after he has led the nation of Israel as a judge for 20 years, he's gone through all these feats of strength. He's had a lot of feats of rage. And sometimes, the two went together in his life. But now we find him lying in the lap of a Philistine woman. And we don't have time to recount the whole story, but I want you to look at this verse, okay? Judges 16:19. Delilah lulled Samson to sleep with his head on her lap, and then she called in a man to shave off the 7 locks of his hair, which kind of been like dreads, I imagine. And this wouldn't really been that big of a deal, except that Samson had taken something that was called the Nazirite vow. And that stipulated 3 things that they promised they wouldn't do. They wouldn't drink any alcohol, they would never touch a dead body, and they would never cut their hair. And up until this time, he'd already done the first 2, and so this last thing that's happening now represented like his last connection he had with his identity, who he was. It was all that was left. And it says, in this way, she began to bring him down, and his strength left him. His strength left him. That last phrase to me is really, really sad. Because maybe you can relate in some way. Maybe this whole season that we've been through, or maybe you're in another season of life where you just kind of feel like, I'm done. I'm drained. I can't go anymore. I don't know how I'm going to do. My strength is just gone. Maybe you just can't do what you used to do, right? Or you've not yet become everything that you wanted to become in your life. And I struggle with that, especially as I get older. I'm in this midlife stage and a lot of different levels, right? But can I just be kind of shallow? Let me talk about physical strength for just a second as an example. Like some of you know, I like to run. I wasn't always a runner. But in my younger years, I never really started running until I got older. My younger years, I would lift some weights. I never got anywhere close to guys like Bert doing his 25 push-up challenges and or Shelby. I mean, I couldn't, Big Mike sometimes. I never touched that. But I enjoyed it, right? So when I got serious about running a few years back, I wanted to also work on my strength so that I'd have a good core, I'd be able to kind of finish races. So I started out with some light weights. Which for me would have been, once or twice a week, humbling. What I would think of as what I could do was a lot less. But I'm dealing with the reality that I can't do what I used to do. Not yet, anyway. I'm working on it, and I'm not going to tell you what like my current bench press is because you might hurt my feelings. And I know some of you ladies probably don't even care what I'm talking about right now, can't even really understand it. But like us guys, you get it, right? Because somehow our bench press is inexplicably connected to our egos forever. Like we'll still be 90 years old. Like, do you even lift, bro? Right? I mean, what's your bench? But a couple of weeks back, okay, I'm doing pretty good. I felt like I was making some gains and seeing some numbers go up, right? Trying to lose a little bit of this quarantine gut, get back in some pants that I can't put on anymore. But this particular day, okay, this workout I was doing, I got under the bar, just kind of do a warm-up, and it just felt like someone had doubled the weight. And this wasn't even my workout yet. And it was weird. I mean, I knew I was feeling a little bit tired, been through a lot, and I know every once in a while you should take a break, but I'd only been really going strong for a couple of weeks, and I thought I was getting stronger, but on this day, I just felt like, to feel like I'd lost my strength like that right off the bat, I told Kimberly, okay, I'm not even going to the barber anymore. We're just going to go long, and I'm going to get some dreads. And, I asked a running coach about it, though, one of the guys that I work with. And the coach first asked me about my posture, my running posture. And I'm like, dude, I'm not asking about my running form. I can't lift for some reason. Like, my strength is gone. But he was like, okay, but think about this. Do you notice when you're running, does your head seem to kind of lean down when you're getting tired from running? And I thought about it, and I had to kind of admit, I had been noticing a lot of slumping going on, probably doing that toward the end of a hard run. And so this coach said, okay, well, the same thing is true in lifting as it is in running. It might not be that you're lacking strength. You might just lack balance. You might just lack some stability. And he said, okay, you're training hard, right? You're seeing some gains. The numbers are going in the right direction, so you want to keep pushing. But a lot of times, we push too hard to the cost of good form, and it costs us stability, balance. And so he said, Dennis, you got to swallow your pride about the digits, and you got to concentrate on doing a weight the same way you would when you're out there doing a pace, right? Concentrate on doing a weight that you can still do with good form. Maintain some stability, and the gains will keep coming, right? But you're not going to risk burnout. You're not going to risk injury that way. But here's the principle, okay? And it's true both in life and in exercise. If you lack stability in one area of your life, one part of your body, it affects all the rest, right? Have you noticed this? It's kind of hard just to separate one part of your life or one part of your body even and not have it affect the rest of it. Like, have you ever had to overcompensate in one area, maybe because you were injured or you had a surgery or something like that, a pain? Now, when I was going through this a couple weeks ago, I wasn't injured, but I was probably tired and I probably needed an extra day or two of recovery. And that imbalance of trying to push when I shouldn't push was causing me not to be able to do what I could do before. It was an imbalance. And here's what some of you need to hear, okay, related to this. Listen, some of you right now are stronger than you think you are, stronger than you feel like you are. And if you can just restore balance, if you can get some stability back into those areas of your life, you'll see a strength release that's already there, but you've yet to realize it, okay? You need to gain balance, but you know how to do that? The nation of Israel at the time of Samson was in trouble because there was a history of the judges being kind of imbalanced. Like they were strong, but they weren't stable. They'd serve God a little while, then they'd serve themselves a little while. Then they'd go back to serving God for a little while, then they'd serve themselves for a little while. And I don't know if anybody can relate to that, right? Follow God a little while, follow their own desires, follow the voices around them a little while, follow the other nations. They'd lost their balance. They'd never lost their strength, but they'd lost their stability. And listen, okay, I want some of you that are here today, listening today, to know, okay, you're not weak. That's not, it feels that way, but you're not weak. You haven't lost your strength. Your inner bully, maybe some other people outside yourself are feeding you that lie because you have the strength. What you need to do is regain your stability, regain your focus, regain your balance. And I discovered, like when I was working out, a couple of other pieces of equipment that I like. Some of you guys won't like these because they're not for like building muscles necessarily. They're for balance. But like some days, okay, I'll go through the same motions like bench pressing, but I'll pick up some lighter like dumbbells or even use some cables. And if you've ever worked on machines like this. Why? Because when I'm using dumbbells or cables or something, I have to really focus on stability. And, it gets those little muscles that I don't use a lot just kind of twitching and moving, right? And you can feel like you got to really, really concentrate to get it going. But those are the little guys that I'm working on that actually help me run stronger and run longer and retain balance and good form when I'm tired. I'm creating an unstable situation so that I can strengthen the stabilizing muscles so I can grow in strength, so I can grow in balance, so I can endure, right? Listen, okay, this is what I want you to understand. You might feel like right now you're in an unstable situation, and maybe you are, but God is using it, if you will trust Him through it, to strengthen your faith, to build endurance. Faith muscles aren't all about like big pecs and big biceps, spiritually speaking, right? Faith is built from the inside. The supporting muscles that keep you stable until the next unstable situation comes and hits. When that happens, you'll have the strength to remain stable. Some of you have grown up in unstable environments, right? And maybe now as you're getting older, you think things like, I'm never going to be a good parent. I didn't have good models. Or, I'll never get ahead financially, right? I just never had the breaks. I never had those opportunities. I don't even know where to start. I don't know how to have a relationship with God. Nobody ever really showed me. I can't get healthy, right? I can't make a change and have it stick. And you assume that all that means, okay, well, there's something wrong with me. I'm just not strong. I'm just not a strong person like a lot of other people. That's what your inner bully wants you to believe anyway. That's what your enemy wants you to believe. But it doesn't mean you're not strong. It just means you don't have stability in some area of your life. Samson didn't lose all his strength at once when he got this haircut. Okay, it kind of reads that way. It culminated with that. But he started losing his strength way, 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 way longer before he found his head in Delilah's lap. And I want to kind of wrap this morning up by just giving you 3 what I call pillars of stability that you need to have if you're going to find your strength, if you're going to silence that inner bully in your head, if you're going to make some positive changes that last, if you're going to make it through this season and come out even stronger on the other side. One of these days I'd love to write something about what I'm calling the laws of sustainable change, things I'm just kind of learning the hard way. And within these laws, these principles, I've identified at least 3 foundational pillars that you need if you're going to silence that inner bully and maintain long-term success. In fact, my inner bully told me I shouldn't get up here and share these with you because I'm just not ready yet to talk about them. I'm going to risk it anyway, or I'm going to risk my stabilizer muscles and talk about this. All right, you ready? 3 pillars. And what do pillars do? Think about this. What do pillars do? They stabilize, right? Yeah, they support. They give strength. So if you're paying attention, I want you to write these down, put them in a memory so you can use them against somebody, use them against your spouse later on. But the first pillar is what I would call desire. Right, the want to. What do I want? Desire. And desire actually goes a lot more than just what I want. It's more than just a want to. It's more than me just saying, okay, I want to get out of debt. I want to run a 5K, right? I want to heal my marriage. I want to stop looking at porn or whatever. Desire that empowers a sustainable change that sticks. That means that you have to stabilize. You have to learn to manage your emotions. Because Samson, you read his story, he could be a drama queen, right? I mean, he could, because Samson, he operated not just by his emotions, he actually functioned for his emotions. They drove him. And follow me here, okay? Because there's a big difference. Emotions are good. God gave us our emotions. We should feel. You need to have emotions. But if your life is driven by your emotions, if you're reactionary instead of responding to things, your life's going to be fickle. Your life's going to be unstable. It's going to be inconsistent. And some of you dudes are already thinking that I'm talking about her. But listen, guys, we can be 10 times more emotional. We just show it differently than a lot of women, right? We just don't express it the same. Mr. March Madness, right? Mr. Chiefs home opener, right? Samson's wives would cry, but Samson would go out and kill people. Who's more emotional? I want you to write this down, okay? If what you want, if your desire isn't what God wants, even if you get it, and sometimes you might, even if you get it, though, it is going to spoil, it is going to ruin your purpose. In fact, for your homework, you should just go back and read Samson's story. It's in Judges 13 through 16, just a few chapters. It'd be interesting. And you'll see how God gave him the right desires. And God gave him an emotional passion to lead Israel and to deliver them from the Philistines. But Samson took that good passion, that good desire, and he spent it on his emotional preferences instead of letting desire drive his purpose that God had put him there for. Samson had ambition. Samson had a lot of potential. He had desire even, but it was driven by his emotions, and it destroyed him. You know, I heard one coach say one time that it takes three things to be a champion. He said it takes skill, it takes opportunity, and it takes drive, right? Skill, opportunity, and drive. Now, skill is something you can learn. You don't necessarily have to be born with skill to learn skill. You just have to work at it, right? And opportunity, you could be given the right opportunity. You could go find the right opportunity. But drive, purpose, desire, that's not something that anybody can just give you or teach you. Nobody can put the drive in you. The problem for most of us is, listen to this, the problem for most of us is that what we want just isn't worth enough. So it's easy to quit when there's no value to it, right? We just want a job, but we don't really want to make a difference through our work, right? We want to be blessed, but we don't want to be a blessing. We want security, we want safety, but we don't want to live a life bigger than ourselves. Samson used just enough strength, all right, to get what he wanted, but nothing more. And because of that, he sorely undershot his potential. He saw what he wanted, and he took it. And that sounds good, right? But the only things I can really find that Samson had enough desire to get were revenge and women. That was his story. Killing people and getting women. And if your commitments aren't aligned with your purposes, if your desire is not aligned with what God created you to ultimately be and do, even your achievements will be empty. Even when you get what you want, it will be empty. He had the strength to accomplish it, but he didn't have the discipline to point it in the right direction. That leads us to the second pillar that's really the glue to everything else. This might be the most important central pillar, discipline. And we love that word, don't we? Right? Inner integrity. Intestinal fortitude, somebody's called it, right? It's just the grit to do it. Discipline. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this one. This is a whole other message. But if you're only looking to your emotions and your appetite and your gut desire, your reactions to drive your disciplines, you'll never be stable. Doing the right things consistently is hard. Don't let anybody convince you. You're never going to arrive at a point where it's not. Discipline is hard. Establishing the right habits. It takes a determination, intentionality. It means doing it when you don't feel it. It means this, okay? It means learning the difference between I can't and I just don't want to. And we got to be gut level honest when we try to decipher the difference between these two. And only you really know sometimes. Samson made 3 commitments as a part of that vow he made to God, right? And he broke all 3 of them. Why? Because he wasn't disciplined. He let his emotions drive him. Listen, when you have the right desire, you might have the right purpose, but if you don't give it the proper discipline, it turns to apathy. That's what happens. You just give up. And what's the use? You'll give up, you'll be imbalanced, you'll feel like a failure. But it isn't because you can't. You've lied to yourself or somebody else has given you that idea. And it's not even because you won't. Have you even given yourself the chance to succeed? Have you even shown up yet? You don't get stronger without some solid commitment, and your bully will turn desire against you and make you think that you're incapable. But you're not. You're not. You might just need to give yourself the chance to prove to yourself that you can. And that's a choice, okay? That's a discipline, and discipline doesn't just happen. You don't wake up with it. You have to choose to point your strength in the right direction. And when you begin to point that strength in the right direction through desire and through discipline, you'll come to a third pillar, and that's what I call demonstration, because I like it all starting with D's. I sometimes refer in my life, this is the digits. I'll tell Kimberly, or when I'm coming home from around, I got to go do my digits. That means I go record stuff, right? Data. To me, that's the evidence, okay? This is the experience of it all. I didn't just talk about it. I didn't just want to do it. I didn't even just have a good plan. I did it, and here's why I can show you how it looked, right? And it's hard to doubt experience. You can argue with my theology, you can argue with my philosophies and my opinions. It's really hard to argue with my experiences, though. Once you got the right desire and you have the right discipline, it's time to prove it. It's time to put it to work. Not to everybody else, okay? Don't misunderstand. This isn't proven to anybody else. It's proven to you, right? They don't define you. Not even to God. You don't have to prove anything to God. He already knows everything about you. He knows what you're capable of. He put it in you. But you have to work it. God's not going to work it for you. You demonstrate it to you and to your inner bully, because nothing speaks truth to your soul better than experience. There's no greater evidence than demonstrating it. Demonstration. But I'll say this too. Although you shouldn't be overly expectant or concerned with the expectations of others, or you don't have to believe that you need to prove something to people in order to be happy. You do need to be concerned with the people you surround yourself with. The Bible talks about this a lot too, but in a season, especially when you're asking God to sustain you, when you're asking God to strengthen you, you can't keep leaning on weak people. Now, understand what I'm talking about here too. I want you to hear this in the right context. And it isn't necessarily always just the wrong people. Some of us have no people. And we try to find balance in isolation, and you can't do that either. You need coaches. You need teammates. You need people who care enough to not let you give up on yourself. You need some people who'll speak honestly and kindly when they see that you're not living up to your potential. You're not demonstrating what you have the strength to accomplish. But listen, okay? And I've learned this the hard way too. You keep leaning on weak people who only tell you what you want to hear, or too afraid to tell you the truth, or they got their own issues they're not willing to deal with. Don't be surprised when they let you down. Okay? If you put your head in Delilah's lap, don't be surprised when you wake up bald. In this season, you might need some new people. Right? You might need a new squad. And listen, the best place I believe to find them is right here. You need to be around people with similar goals, with similar disciplines, who won't let you just sit on your desire and your discipline without demonstrating your strength. This is what I want you to get. Belief is born out of demonstration. That's where we learn to trust. That's where we learn to believe in ourselves, where we learn to believe in other people's when we see it. That was the whole principle of following Jesus. Right? I track almost every activity I do when I run to like a neurotic level. I wish I was that disciplined in other areas of my life. It's kind of shaming when I start talking about it. But that's why I kind of sometimes refer to that third pillar as digits, because that's how I demonstrate to myself what I've done. I was going to bring up like a print. I started printing out like the last couple of years of my digits, and it was embarrassing. It was like long and whatever. But I could go back and I could point to, because it's color-coded too. That's how neurotic I am. So I have like red days where I didn't hit it right? I have like green days where I ate it up and like loved it, and like blue is great. But I could go back and I can look, okay, here's a season where I was struggling, but I came out of it, right? And I had more green days after this. This is what I was doing 2 years ago. Here's what I'm doing now. Right? Spreadsheets, logs, tracking apps. It's almost a whole another problem. But when I can look at the evidence, when I can look at the facts, the proof that I've demonstrated what I wanted to do and done, it just shuts that inner bully down. The next time I'm going through something hard, he wants me to believe that I can't. Yeah, I can, because this is when I did it before, and this is how I did it. Right now, I just don't want to. There's a big difference. But it's not that I can't, I just don't have the desire maybe. Or maybe I just don't have the right plan. I don't know how to execute it yet. I didn't always hit the goal, but I at least gave myself the chance sometimes, and that made me stronger. So you know what? I've still got goals. Why? Because I believe in myself. Because I believe in me, because God believes in me. Because God put it in me. And He's given me the strength to do everything that He has called me to do today. Now look at how this played out for Samson, all right? They'd taken his strength, his ability, then they took his vision. Like they literally gouged his eyes out. But the truth is, when they took his sight, it was kind of just this outward realization of something that had gone on in Samson's life he'd lost his vision a long time before this, right? Because Samson, for 20 years, this strong man was becoming a slave before they ever imprisoned him. His strength was turned to weakness. And so one day the Philistines, they were celebrating their false gods, having a big party, and they wanted to bring Samson out to kind of humiliate him. and show how strong they were to have captured him. I want you to look at what it says in verse 24. It says, when the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, our God's delivered our enemy to us. The one who killed so many of us is now in our power. It goes on, half drunk by now. The people demanded, bring Samson out so he can amuse us. So he was brought from prison to amuse them, but then they made a mistake, okay? It says, because they had him stand between the pillars supporting the roof. Now, what do pillars do again? Stabilize, right? Strengthen. So when they stood in between the pillars, he can't see anymore. But I want you to see this, okay? It was in his weakest moment. It was in his weakest circumstance that he accomplishes his strongest victory. Just like we talked about last week. We talked about the Apostle Paul, right? He said, when I'm weak, that's when I'm strong. This is a picture of this. And this will likely mean a lot of different things to many of you. But right now, listen, I'm talking to somebody who's sitting here today or somebody that's watching this right now, and you need a second chance. You need some belief in yourself. Maybe your strength has seemed to left you, and maybe you feel just the burden and the pressures of everything that's on you. You don't have any answers, and you're just living an unstable life. And the voice in your head, it has you feeling like Samson. You're blind, you're vulnerable, you're confined. But here's another mistake they made when they shaved his head even. Because I'm overdue for a barber shop, but I'm not one of these guys that always goes to the same guy, and sometimes they mess my hair up. But I never really worry too bad about it because it's going to what? It's going to grow back. Exactly. Look back in verse 22. This is what they forgot. Before they brought him out as the party fool, it says before long his hair began to grow back. Now listen, okay, some of you today, you've been living under a weight. Maybe you've even surrendered your strength too many times to the enemy. You've given up. This season we're in, maybe it has you feeling lost. Maybe it has you feeling just hopeless and without strength. But listen, it's not gone for good. Before long, it's coming back. Look at verse 26. Samson said to the young servant who was leading him by the hand, he said, place my hands against the pillars that hold up the temple. He says, I just want to rest against them. Can you say dumb move? Then down in verse 29, okay, this is why we read of Samson in this long list of people that had faith, of people whose weakness was turned to strength, why he's in the Faith Hall of Fame. It says, and Samson took hold of the two middle pillars which supported the temple, and he braced himself against them, right? One on his right hand and the other on his left. And this is where Samson saw his strength turn to weakness, turn back to strength. Right? And he did two things here that are really, really important. This is why he had his greatest victory, all right? He took hold of the pillars and he braced himself. He took hold of the pillars and he braced himself. And that's what I want to encourage you to do in this season that you're in and in your next season, right? You've got to take hold of the pillars, these pillars we talked about this morning. You're going to pursue the right desires. You know, what I want, is it a good one? Is it a big enough one? Is it going to keep me going? And you're not going to be driven by purpose or emotion. You're going to be driven by an inner desire to do what God purposed you to do. You're going to take hold of that discipline that's in you that understands the difference between I can't and I just don't want to today, right? And no longer are you going to let fear keep you from even giving yourself a chance to see what God might do in your life. And you're going to demonstrate that, and you're going to watch your faith grow. And you're going to see what God can do in and through you. You're going to take hold, and you're going to brace yourself. You're going to get stability, right? That's what you're going to do in this next season. That's what I hope you'll do when you feel like all hope is gone. The inner bully is telling you you're worthless. There's no use in even trying. You're beyond help. You can't. You feel like things are out of your control. No, you're going to take hold and brace yourself. And this is when Samson, he couldn't see, but he believed. And here's what he prayed. He said, Sovereign Lord, remember me again. Maybe that's your prayer today. God, I'm not where I want to be, but I know you haven't given up. Remember me again. Please strengthen me just one more time. And if you read on, the Bible says he accomplished more in his death than he did in his entire life. You know, when he reached toward the pillars, when he braced himself, when he showed that act of faith, he found a strength that was actually there all along. And I'm just praying this morning that God will use this to do the same for me, that God will use this to do the same for you. Because we're leaning into an increasingly difficult season, it feels like sometimes. There's more challenges week to week, right? And then when we think we get them figured out, we find out we don't. And so I'm praying that God is using this today for you. Some of you are just like what James wrote about, just tossed and turned by the storms. And maybe you feel double-minded and unstable. That's what James talked about. But if you will brace yourself, if you will find the desire and the discipline, and you'll begin to demonstrate that, you'll find a strength you didn't even know you had. Put there by a God who created you and knew it was there all along. So will you just pray with me? Father, I just pray this morning that through the example of these heroes of faith, God, that we will see what really made them faithful was their trust and their belief in you. And God, that came not because it was easy, but in fact because it was difficult to do. But God, that's where your strength has the greatest opportunity to shine in our lives. God, would you just remind us of that today? Whatever it is that we might be facing, whatever it is that we might be carrying with us, whatever seems to be shadowing over us right now, God, would you give us an ability through your Spirit to say, I trust you, God. God, give us a clear vision of what it is that you would have us to do, that our wants would be in alignment with your wants. And God, in doing so, God, would you give us a discipline, an ability to choose. And God, I know you're not going to do that for us. It's something that you call us to do, but you give us the strength to do. God, help us to believe in ourselves because you believe in us. And God, as we demonstrate it, continue to strengthen our faith. Do that for us as a church and as individuals as we go out of here today. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.